So, good day, everyone, and thank you for joining Maximizing Impact, Leveraging Fractional Learning and Development for Organizational Excellence, brought to you by Insignia Training Partners. I believe most of you know me, but if not, my name is Bernie DeSantis, and I am the CEO and owner of Insignia Training Partners. We are an outsourced or fractional training and resource provider. Now, we do intend for this to be an interactive and engaging event, so please be sure to participate in the chat. That is open for your commentary, as well as the polling activities that we'll be doing a little bit later. But if you do have questions, please utilize the Q&A, and we will weave them into the conversation or hold them for the Q&A section at the end of our session today. Also, please do be advised that we are recording our event today. Now, the concept that we're presenting of fractional work really isn't new, right? We've heard of contract resources for a really, really long time, and we're going to talk a little bit about the differentiation between the two. But, frankly, fractional or contract work is one of the most effective ways for businesses to grow or scale without adding any overhead to the business. Now, our speakers today are three fabulous individuals who are fractional chief learning officers for Insignia Training Partners, carrying with them quite literally a full lifetime of combined 80+ years of experience in training, enablement, and coaching in dozens of industries and organizations between them. So let's start off with Michelle D. King. It's my pleasure to introduce Michelle. She is a seasoned learning and development and organizational effectiveness leader with over 20 years of experience. Michelle has led transformative initiatives at major companies like SAP and SuccessFactors, and today she's going to share from her experience on fractional learning and development. I'd also like to introduce Lauren Brownstone, who is a learning and behavior change expert. She serves also as a fractional chief learning officer for Insignia, and she is passionate about developing organizational competencies and nurturing skills throughout teams and companies to turn them into behavior change machines. She works under the philosophy that everyone wants to succeed and needs the circumstances and nurturing to bring out and become their very best. And lastly, Denise Russo. Denise came to Insignia with the idea for fractional work, which has resulted in an enhancement to our business strategy. She's not only our original chief learning officer, but Denise is a seasoned corporate coach, visionary leader, and dedicated advocate with extensive experience in team leadership and organizational development. Throughout her career, she's demonstrated a keen ability to foster exploration, enablement, engagement, and empowerment among leaders at all levels. Denise's area of expertise encompasses transformational leadership, executive development, mindfulness, collaboration, effective communication, career transitions, personal development, and solution-oriented problem solving. Her collaborative approach focuses on maximizing human potential, facilitating transformation, and implementing growth strategies through coaching. So please, members of the audience, please allow me to introduce and please join me in welcoming Denise, Michelle, and Lauren. Go ahead and send your applause. All right. So we are going to kick off with a quick polling question. So our producer, Joey, and if you have any technical issues, please drop a line to Joey in the chat. But our first polling question is, what is your level of familiarity with the terminology and function of fractional learning and development? So I'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and respond, and then we will jump into our first question of the day. All right, we are full. That's 11 of 11. All right, Joey, go ahead and end and share the results. So a small percentage of you say that you get it and that you can explain what fractional learning and development is. 7 of you understand what fractional means, but not necessarily fractional learning and development. And 1 of you have said no understanding of it at all. So this is going to be a great opportunity for us to educate you a little bit about fractional learning and development, its value and implications in a business. And hopefully you walk away with an understanding of what it is that Insignia is able to provide to you and your organizations. So with that, Michelle, what exactly is fractional learning and development? Why is it becoming increasingly relevant for businesses today? And what is the difference between contract and fractional?
Those are great questions. I have no idea. No, I'm just kidding. So basically, I'm going to try to break this down, and then I'm going to use an analogy to kind of help us to understand it a little bit more fully. But so fractional learning and development is the practice of hiring an L&D expert or a chief learning officer, someone who is at that level of expertise on a part-time, temporary, or project-based basis. And that sounds a lot like just contract work, I know, but there really is some significant differences. So yeah, I'll tell you the benefits in a second, but what I want you to understand is that somebody who's coming in as a fractional L&D expert has a background that includes things like strategic leadership, talent development, organizational development, change management, program design and implementation, metrics and evaluation, and mentorship and coaching. So you're going to utilize a fractional L&D person as an expert in the field, and it can encompass all the same things that you might have both at a director level and an executive level in your organization. Now, I wanted you to think of this, and I'm going to use an analogy here, is like imagine that you're hosting an important event and you want to serve an exquisite, memorable meal, just like you want to serve this best version of learning for your organization. So instead of hiring just a full-time chef where you're going to say, hey, make this, make that, you bring in a master chef for that event, just for this event. The chef has years of experience. They can create customized menus and ensure that every dish is perfect for your guests. You get the benefit of their expertise without having to employ them full time, right? You're just bringing them for this event. So in that same way, fractional L&D experts or CLOs, it allows a company to bring in a top tier professional who can design and implement the perfect menu of learning and development programs tailored to the company's needs. And so the business basically gets the benefit of their specialized skills and experience, but only for the duration of a specific project or to solve a particular challenge. It makes it very cost effective and flexible solution because, as we know, when you hire someone full time, there is a lot more cost involved, right? So if you think about it, the benefits from a cost perspective are that it's very cost efficient. There's a lot of flexibility in the fact that you can bring them in as needed. You have access to specialized expertise. Accelerated impact. You can get there a lot faster than you can if you hire somebody and you have to onboard them for months. And you can focus on things like strategic priorities, which right now, with the way that things are going in the workplace, everything has to be a strategic priority because you're now involving AI, which I will talk about a little bit later. But that's basically what it is, the benefits of it, and how it's utilized in the companies.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And
Mhm.
Denise, Lauren, I will give you an opportunity, obviously, to dovetail on that. Any additional commentary?
I'll just say Michelle said it so well and actually made me hungry as well.
Indeed,
Me
it is
too, I didn't
lunchtime.
have breakfast.
All right, so this is an overhead question for all three of you. And Denise, I'll start with you. What brought you to the fractional model of L&D, right? It was effectively a conversation that you and I had that introduced Insignia to the overall fractional model. But what brought you to it originally?
Being laid off from my job. So I will share that with perhaps many of you on this call. You have found yourself working for a large company or even mid-sized company going through transformation and change. And what we've seen is that the people that seem to get cut first are people from the fields of learning development, coaching, and leadership development. And yet those are the most pivotal fields for companies to thrive, not just survive. And so when I came to Bernie, it was at a period of time when Bernie's company was headhunting for people for full-time roles. And I was asked if I was interested in headhunting services. And frankly, I wasn't, because I knew that I didn't want to go backwards. I wanted to move forwards. And so I actually just approached the concept of what if you could take someone like me or Michelle or Lauren that have an arsenal of experience, and that we could go into other companies who don't have the money or the time or the interest to bring on full-time resources for part-time or short-term initiatives. And that concept was this fractional model where we looked at all the elements of what it means to enable, empower, and engage a person. So anything from the front line of instructional design all the way up to strategy and architecture, and including leadership development and coaching. And so that's why I brought the idea to the table. And I believe wholeheartedly this is the future of not just learning, but it is the future of business to continue to rely on resources in the moment when they need them the most. It's the most cost-effective way. It's the most flexible way. It's the best way for companies to access specialized experience and expertise. And frankly, it's the best way to accelerate results and impact versus trying to gather somebody who's just graduated and get them up to speed with not just your culture, but the role and how to deliver at the highest levels.
Thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, I thought that was a fantastic explanation, Denise. For me personally, it's how can I help companies improve their learning and organizational outcomes? And this is a way that many organizations can access this level of expertise for the duration that they need it. Not every company, a lot of companies, their first learning resource is, just has a few years of experience, if that. Sometimes they're leveled up within the organization to that role without really having that background. And so this is a way to really get the right resources in at the right time to make the maximum impact.
Absolutely. It's kind of the old just-in-time type of theory, right? You see it a lot in the automotive business, right? Just getting the right resource, the right tools, the right products or processes involved when you need them, as opposed to always just having a stack of widgets sitting there waiting, may or may not be being used at the time. So thank you for that, Lauren. Michelle, over to you. And I know that you did a little bit of research before joining the webinar for some statistics around this as well. I don't know if this is appropriate time to share any of those, but
no, it is. Well, what brought me to it is that I've spent pretty much my lifetime working in learning and development. I've done other roles, but it's all in those roles, and Lauren and Denise can attest to this. I always end up in learning and development. It doesn't matter where I go. This is where I end up. And at some point I was just like, okay, I give up. I'm going to be an L&D. But what I found was that I spend a lot of time really honing my skills, learning, researching. I'm an avid researcher. I'm getting my doctorate in education. And what I wanted to be able to do was to do this more broadly, because when you're in an organization, you're really stuck in this role as kind of an order taker, even if you're not really an order taker. Even if you try to push them to not make you an order taker, you end up still doing that quite a bit. You're being run by other people around you and what their needs are. And what I wanted to do was really help companies innovate, because that's what's important to me, is how do I help people learn more effectively, more efficiently, and in a way that feels very respectful to them, rather than it be like, here's this mandatory boring training that I have to take. And we've all endured those, right? But in fractional leadership, the other thing to me is efficiency. And it sounds strange because it sounds like, oh, well, I don't want companies to spend a lot of money. But honestly, what I want is for people to invest properly. I've run 2 startups, and I know how expensive it can be to get hire on people, and also then you have to ramp them up, et cetera. And if things aren't working out, it's just if I can hire an expert in, I'm going to save a lot of money. And so if you look at this, if you hire in somebody at a director or executive level for learning and development, your ramp up time for them to be productive is about 3 to 8 months. And it really depends on the role, but it takes a considerable amount of time, whereas we're coming already prepared. So it's about 2 weeks to ramp up someone in fractional L&D to get them on board with what needs to be done, because they aren't tied to the organization and the politics of the organization. And all the hierarchy and everything. They already have a mission to work on this project or contract. And if you look at that in terms of dollars and cents, essentially, if you hire in a fractional L&D expert for about a 3-month period versus if you hired somebody full time, it's about a cost savings about $30,000 for you. So if you're a smaller company or even a medium-sized company, $30,000 is a lot of money for you to be saving. And then you're done too. You don't have to invest more. The project is done. You can move on. So from my perspective, I get to have lots of opportunities to work with different companies and learn their structure and try innovative and new things. And then also we're saving them money by doing this. So I look at it as a win-win all the way around.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's move on to the next question. Let's talk about some examples where fractional learning and development has or would have significantly improved a company's learning outcomes or overall performance. And then what were some of the key factors that ultimately contributed to that success? And Michelle, I'm going to go right back to you to start this one.
Yeah, I mean, you look at companies like Slack, for instance, they needed to onboard a significant number of employees. And by the way, this is something that Denise and I, and I'm sure Lauren has been involved in too, where all of a sudden someone goes, hey, guess what? We have the budget. We're going to hire, 300 employees and we need to get them onboarded pretty much immediately, right? So Slack, instead of going to their team and saying, hey, stop doing all the things you're doing that are important and just focus on onboarding, which is what happens, right? You're in the middle of your 16 projects and now all of a sudden this mandate changes and now you're working on onboarding. And you might think to yourself, well, that's an HR thing. And L&D often does sit in HR, but really it falls to learning and development to create the onboarding experience overall. All of those training modules, all of the information is coming from L&D, right? So Slack said, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go hire a fractional L&D expert and have them come in and do the onboarding for us. And they did. It was a 3-month gig. And basically what they said was not only did it save them a ton of money, about, I think they estimated it was about $50,000. But on top of that, their employees were up to speed and more productive. Plus, they didn't interrupt what the L&D people were already doing in their company that were priorities for the company. So you have situations like this where it's like, oh, we need to, all of a sudden we need help with something, rather than trying to now make your people work harder, give them more work to do. You allow them to be able to focus on that while you get this expert to come in and take care of this particular issue for you that you need at this time. So that's just one of many examples of companies using fractional L&D.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. Lauren?
I don't want to steal the example of onboarding, but I think it's the greatest example, right? Don Ohlert, who's on here, was just telling me last night that within 44 days, most employees have decided whether or not they're going to leave. That's largely a statement of their onboarding experience and how supportive they felt. So onboarding is extremely important. And as Michelle just said, it's a great way to get in and get out, not interrupt the course of business as it already is. There's also tremendous opportunities for, and both, Michelle and Denise can speak to this too, is bringing a coaching culture to an organization and making sure that everybody knows how to level everybody else up, because we all rise together. And these are excellent ways to bring in the expertise that you need, get the most that you can out of it, and then keep going business as usual. And the cool thing that we do when we go into companies is we don't just do the project and walk away. We're setting it up, we're implementing it, we're making sure that it is sustainable once we go. And that's a really big, I think, important thing to point out here, because we're not just getting in and getting out. We're giving long-term value to companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the value is there long after we've finished the project, right? If we've set the foundation for them, it's ultimately, I don't know if I necessarily want to say easier, but I will use that word, easier, for them to continue the foundation that's already been built than try to create it from scratch themselves, right? And if they don't have the skills or the experience or the resources to be able to do it effectively on their own, they will never get it to the level at which a fractional could come in and take it to. So thank you for that. I think that there's really two main reasons that most people leave an organization, right? We've talked about onboarding as being one, right? They have a poor experience, they don't feel supported, but the other side of it is leadership, right? And feeling supported once they're actually already out there. And so, Denise, I'm going to kind of flip it over to you. What's your perspective from the leadership perspective on this?
Thank you for asking the question, because I 100% agree that you need to lay the foundation first with onboarding, and a solid onboarding that can sustain. And so when you think about this from the leadership lens, organizations and the leaders are thinking about driving organizational transformation and change management right now. And so the concern, I believe, about the future of work is that leaders are in a state of constantly adapting, whether it's to new technologies and work models or hybrid work or remote work. Executives really are concerned right now about maintaining their organizational cohesion, their culture, their productivity, all in the midst of this whirlwind of change. But they're also focused on developing the future-ready talent. And Michelle could absolutely speak to this because there needs to be a significant shift and change in the way we look at a skills-based environment for work. But having people that can work in a dynamic environment through the leadership lens is where we come to the table with not just technical training or technical skills or technical enablement products and services, but how we actually have the confluence between the mind and the heart of the person. Because John Maxwell says it best. He says, people won't go along with you if they won't get along with you. And so if we can get it right at the leadership level, then you're going to see less attrition. You're going to see also not just people who are afraid to quit because the economy is bad and they can't get another job now. There's no more great resignation because there's no jobs to go to. People have silent quit long ago now, sitting at jobs, waiting for Friday and dreading Monday. And so with leadership development as a fractional model, we're able to come in sort of like superheroes or a SWAT team, if you will, just in time in the moment of need for whatever it is that that company is experiencing in the climate that they're experiencing today, focusing from the top down. You know, as they say, everything trickles from the top down. And so if we get that piece right, then everything else can lift up from the bottom.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that statement more.
Mhm.
You know, I would even argue that leadership development is as important, if not more important, than the onboarding, because you can have mediocre onboarding, but if you have really fantastic leadership that ultimately supports those people once they get out into that production role, you can almost overcome the shortcomings of onboarding by having truly great coaching culture and great leadership in the organization.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you for your comments. All right. So this next one is going to be directed specifically towards you, Denise, and Joey. If you could please launch the next poll.
We'll see what
Joey,
people guess.
you still with us?
It's launched on my end.
Yeah, it's launched.
There it is. Okay. I see it just popped up. Thank you. All right. So what percentage of executives are receiving coaching? So I've got 8 of 13 responses. We'll leave it open for just another few seconds. All right, we've got 100% participation, Joe. Let's go ahead and share those results. So overwhelmingly, the response is less than 10% of executives receive coaching. So Denise, I know that you'll speak to the content here or the responses, but my question to you is, how does fractional coaching differ from traditional coaching, and what benefits can businesses expect to have?
Mhm.
So I think that, do you want me to talk about that first or the survey results first?
I think we can talk about the poll first and then transition into my question.
Okay, so it's interesting to see people's responses because this was based on a survey that Stanford University did with 200 executives. And the question was, how many executives received coaching? And it may not surprise you, although in the poll, I think, and keep us honest, I think it was 17% said that 1/3 of the people, or 15%, okay? 15%, which is 2 people on the webinar today, said that the executives received about the coaching. That's the answer. 2/3 of the executives that were surveyed had not consistently, so the word is important, consistently received coaching. But here's what's funny about that survey. It was 200 executives from around the world. 100% of all of the 200 people said that they got value when they did engage with a coach. So that's the important point there. So I think the way that I'll answer the next part of the question is in a couple of different ways. First, I'll reference our fun song from the beginning of the webinar. Great song by Pharrell. In fact, for those of you that know me, you know I have a podcast called What's on Your Bookshelf. I do it with Michelle and another person. And our topic for all of 2024 is the topic of happiness. So hopefully you can go check that out. It's called What's on Your Bookshelf. But in the beginning of that song, the very first verse says, it might seem crazy what I'm about to say. I don't think what I'm about to say is going to sound crazy to you, but what will be crazy to you is how basic what I'm about to say is not embraced by executives and or companies. So right now, performance management, professional development, and succession, and especially from those of you on the call that have a background in HXM, HCM, HR, those are the things that are on top of the minds for businesses right now. But when we look at what's on the top of the mind for executives right now, they're looking at it in a little bit different way. They're looking for things like conflict management, change management, decision making, especially when there's conflicting agendas. However, what drives businesses? Stakeholders, shareholders, and money. And so the board members of these companies are looking at it from even a different lens, which is things like they want CEOs and the C-suite to focus on mentoring skills, developing talent, delegating, and building a solid bench in those companies. So think about the difference of what I just said. The board, the people that are directly responsible for the fiscal responsibility of the company, want mentoring, developing talent, delegating, and building a solid bench. Those are what Michelle and I call essential skills. We don't call them soft skills. They're essential. They're essential to run a people-based business. But what the executives are looking at are the tactical things, managing conflict, change, and decision making, making sure that the operation is running smoothly. So to your question, Bernie, around what is the benefit of having fractional versus traditional coaching, there's three things. One, fractional coaches come to the table with extensive experience. And I think it's important to make a point here that we're talking about qualified business coaches, qualified executive coaches. This is not about life coaches. This is not about career coaches. Very relevant coaching markets, not the topic I'm talking about. I'm talking about business coaches and executive coaches. So if you're an executive and you are navigating complex challenges and strategic decision making, you cannot rely on a traditional coaching model that's going to walk you through exercises or a worksheet or some sort of a diagram. You need someone who's really going to ask you the tough questions that are going to give you the best results. That's number one. Number two, if you are in the midst of organizational transformation and change management, the things you're thinking about right now are not the same things that you were thinking about before your business became a little bit volatile. So once again, bringing in somebody in the just-in-time moments to work you through solutions to your challenges and opportunities is the best way to do that. Fractional good business coaches and good executive coaches are not inexpensive resources. And so therefore, if you're going to put your money where your mouth is, you want to bring those people in when it's going to matter the most to you so that you can get the results you want. Because this is about getting results, not just about changing the way that you think. It's about changing the way you think and believe and behave and act, but it's the point of getting better results and outcomes for your business. And then the third thing, which I think is very important for us to talk about and to think about, is that it's not just about running the operation. The person running the operation is a person. And so the third reason to have a fractional qualified, certified in more than one type of a product or service as a coach helps whoever is engaging with a coach, whether it's your frontline person just coming out of college up to your C-suite, is about enhancing personal and organizational resilience. Because I think we can all attest that right now there is a severe amount of burnout, stress, focus on mental health and mental health awareness, particularly in the context of highly demanding, always on work cultures. And so when you bring in a good and solid business coach, they're able to look at your operation, but they're also able to look at it through the lens of your holistic health. And so when you look at the two models, I will say this in closing, I am 100% all in favor of companies having a hybrid model where they employ coaches within their business. But here's where this kicker comes in with Insignia Training Partners, is that we are equipped and ready to come in to help companies not just build coaching cultures, but build coaching programs that will sustain. So this isn't just about us providing a coaching service. We're able to come in and help you build from the ground floor up, or to enhance and improve your existing coaching programs within your companies. And I say that with confidence because the program that I led with over 700 coaches in my former role won the Prism Award from ICF, which is like the Academy Award or the Grammy Award, if you will, for coaching in organizations. I sit on the global board of directors for the International Coaching Federation, specifically for the division called Coaching in Organizations, and I write full-time for Forbes on the topic of coaching and coaching in organizations. So when we say that Insignia truly is able to give you the very cream of the crop and the best in this industry, the people that are at the forefront of knowing these topics, we all three on this call, plus Bernie, invest a significant amount of time in our own personal and professional development. So I say with confidence that I know no other company that's out there in the market that can offer what we do in terms of leadership development and coaching and building coaching. And then obviously the other piece that we've already been discussing today, which is the full rounded learning and development strategy, architecture, design, and delivery.
Fantastic. Thank you, Denise. All right. So let's move on to a question directed specifically for Lauren. So Joe, if you wouldn't mind launching poll number 3. So to the audience, do you know your behavior change rate for any given learning and development initiative? And there may be some of you who are independent or solopreneurs out there, so this may be a little bit tougher question to answer. But do you know your behavior change rate for any learning type initiative? All right. Another few seconds. All right, so Joey, go ahead and end the poll, share the results. So 5 of you, almost half, are not sure. 5 of you, no, you just don't know what that behavior change is. And 2 of you said yes, that you do have some understanding of what that behavior change rate is for any given L&D initiative. So Lauren, within that context, how can a fractional learning and development model impact behavior change in an organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, behavior change rate it's really measuring the impact of our learning, right? We can go to any training session and be like, oh, that felt like a great session. I had fun in that session. That was engaging. We had a lot of people come. It was successful. But the real measure of whether a learning engagement is successful is whether or not we change the behavior later and to what extent we are changing that behavior. And unfortunately, most organizations and most learning teams are not measuring that behavior change rate at the end. Ultimately, your average behavior change rate across all your initiatives is really indicative to your board, to your C-suite, to all of your stakeholders of how successful your company is internally, how able a company is to meet its ambitious goals, right? It's aligned to what the people are able to do. So we align the goals with what the people need to be doing, and then we ensure that they're actually doing those things all the time. And a big part of getting to behavior change is making that shift to skills-based. A lot of companies, a lot of HR teams are still stuck in competency-based learning, but as we make that shift to skills-based, that's when behavior change becomes possible. It's when career pathing becomes possible, when we can develop people into their next roles and articulate diverse development plans very simply for a wide audience. And we can assess skill demands within the org. We can plan for upcoming skill demands in the org. We can recruit ahead of time. All of those things become possible when we shift to skills-based. But I want to focus on behavior change here. Ultimately, behavior change becomes possible when we are skills-based and we have the learning and development expertise throughout the organization that is able to accomplish those outcomes. And again, we don't want to just do it for one initiative. We want to do it across initiatives, right? We're not just looking for one win. We want companies to be able to win across the board. And what you get along with the behavior change, because part of what makes that possible is a learning culture, is a growth mindset throughout the organization, is everybody having basic coaching competencies throughout the organization. So every leader can coach their employees in a non-quizzical, non-demeaning, non-punitive manner, but a way that really encourages them and builds them up and builds up their capacity to do what they are best able to do to serve that organization. The companies that can change the behavior, who can change behavior best, are really poised to beat out their competitors in their market. They're going to grow faster. They're going to retain their employees, because remember, we're creating a culture where behavior change becomes very possible. We're not just getting that one click, that one hit from the one training. This is across the board. Most companies, most teams don't know their average behavior change rate. And personally, I see that as a problem, because if you don't know to what extent you can get people doing the things that they need to be doing to get the results that you need, what are you doing? You're kind of flying blind. We're kind of just playing darts. We're kind of guessing as we go. And so that's why I'm really passionate about behavior change. And I'm really passionate about what we do with Insignia in bringing this to organizations and saying, we're going to make you successful in all of your people development endeavors, not just the one project that you have. We can set you up for success across the board sustainably. As you grow, as you scale, you take this and you take those results with you. That's what I love about this work.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Hey,
Lauren.
Bernie, I want to add something to that,
Please.
because Lauren said a word that's important for our listeners, which is the word sustainability. I was coaching a business leader last week, and this person had attended a class the week prior. So in part of my discussion, I said, we'll call the guy Bernie. For protection of the innocent. But I said, hey, Bernie, what do you remember about, or what value did you get out of that class you took last week? And he said, oh, yeah. You know what? I don't remember. Let me go ahead and look at my notes. It was less than 7 days before my conversation with this person. So we remember the people, we remember if somebody was funny, we remember the convention chicken. But if we're not going to remember the content and the quality of how to apply that content to our life and live it out loud in what we do in business, it's not going to matter. And so, yes, there could be an opportunity where a client would come to Insignia and say, I need you to create a class. But we believe that it isn't just about doing a class or having a one and a done. This is really about the impact over time. And so this even harkens back to what Lauren was saying about onboarding. Onboarding is not a class. Onboarding is a process, and it takes a significant amount of time to make sure that the amount of money that you paid somebody to come work for your company over a period of time of no less than 90 days, usually 180 days, and more so 365 days, won't show you the return on that investment unless you have a sustainable, connected program at all layers, including the leadership development lens. So I wanted to make that point, that the behavior change rate, it's as simple as even asking someone, you attended this, what do you remember about it? How are you going to apply it? And now let's track that over time and see if you actually did. And maybe you check in with somebody 30, 60, 90 days after they participated in a learning engagement and do the same thing and ask again, what do you remember? What did you do? And what's been the impact? It's not hard to get these measures. What's hard is people actually setting up a system and a process to get the measures and then doing something about it.
Yep.
I love that, Denise. And to your point, when we have high rates of behavior change, when we're consistently achieving that 80 to 90%, even higher, because I think 80 to 90 is even like conservative, but we can get higher than that. And when we're doing that, part of the story that you shared about your friend who didn't know what they got out of the training, we have the transparency there. So the learners all leave any kind of learning experience, they leave any kind of conversation, and they know exactly what is expected of them. And they know exactly where they are, and they know exactly what their next steps are. So it's also a way, it kind of builds culture itself too, because we're creating that transparency. We're creating that high performance culture all the time.
Absolutely. Michelle, before we move on to the next question, anything you want to add on this one?
I mean, I think all of this is absolutely true and accurate in what we've experienced ourselves and in the ways that we design and implement training programs. And I'm a big, you hear me talk about this all the time, is that people talk about the learning curve, but they don't talk about the forgetting curve. And just as there's a learning curve, there's a forgetting curve. It's called Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve. And basically what it shows you is that without reinforcement, without reflection, without opportunities to practice, you're going to forget every single thing that you learned in that class. You'll remember maybe one thing within a week, but literally within one day, you lose over 50% of it. So it's useless. So I personally don't like wasting people's time. I'm not going to create something in which you're not going to remember it, because that's not effective for you. And I don't want to waste your time as a learner, but it also isn't effective for the organization because there's no measurement of how that impacted any change that's related to the business objective. So we're missing this opportunity. And this is what happens when you have a lot of people that are working and learning, while well-intentioned, don't have the backgrounds we have. And so they don't know how to do these things. It's not because they don't want to, they just don't know how. And so that's what we're bringing, is the know-how, the experience, and the understanding, the deeper understanding of how learning happens, and also how it doesn't happen often. So it's very important to remember that that's what fractional L&D can do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's unfortunate that there are a lot of organizations out there. They look at training, learning and development, coaching. It's just a box to check for them to say that they've done something. But the harsh reality is that they are wasting their time, their energy, their effort, their money doing things that are ultimately not going to create behavior change, not have an impact on the business. And something that absolutely blows my mind is when organizations will put somebody through training, they don't get the result that they want, and then they put the people back through the exact same training again. It's like, well, wasting every piece of resource you possibly could. All right, I'll step down from my soapbox from that one. All right, so we're going to launch our fourth and final polling question. Joe, if you could please launch the AI poll. So this question is, are you currently using AI in your learning strategy or planning to use it going forward? Okay, responses are flowing in. We're at 80%. No one has said no, and no one has questioned what is learning strategy. So that's good. We're off to a good start. So Joe, you can go ahead and end the poll, share the results. So overwhelmingly, you are either currently using AI in its current iteration, or you're planning to use AI in the future. And, let's be honest, guys, it's kind of like the early days of the internet, right? If you're not learning how to use and leverage the tool, someone else who is ultimately going to take that work and explode. Whereas you, as being the person who's resistant to the change or the tool, will be left behind, unfortunately. So Michelle, you have a lot of experience doing strategic, innovative things in learning and development, and especially now as we see AI becoming more and more common. Can you share some of your experience in how using AI and how it looks in a fractional model?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do want to just emphasize that AI, while it seems like, oh, AI is smarter than all of us, it still isn't. And when it comes to, like, we still have to instruct AI. So part of this is actually developing a strategy for how you're going to use AI and which AIs to use. And so I'll give you a really quick example. So ChatGPT, which is kind of like become more of a standard. Everybody knows that. When you say ChatGPT, people know what that is. That is great. I mean, honestly, it gets me the best, more in-depth answers about things. But like, I use Claude AI if I want to write something that sounds more human. And so understanding that there are varying AIs and they're used for varying purposes. There's another one I use, I want to say it's called Perplexity, but I don't think that's right. I'll have to look it up. That's just for research. So really starting by investigating what AIs are available and what their purposes are, because they're all different. ChatGPT is the most generalized. Now, what I will say is that what I think that AI is going to be the most useful for, or how I use it, is to develop personalized learning programs. So what I can do is I can take all this data and I can put it into ChatGPT and I can say, okay, anyone that is at this level, like based on the data that scored a this, create this learning path. If they scored this, create that learning path. And it can actually design that for me. Content curation and creation, I can use AI tools in curating and generating learning content. And I do that also by also doing research first. And then I put the research into the AI and I say, okay, based on this research, what would you recommend for learning content for a 30-minute module? And then it will spit out what it thinks. And then I will take that and kind of edit it and hone it down myself. It is a partnership. This is what I want you to understand about AI. This is a partnership. This is not AI's in charge and you're just kind of feeding in information. This is partnership. So you don't take exactly what AI says and then just copy and paste it. You want to look through and understand where it's missing things, et cetera, because it doesn't have nuance, right? It doesn't understand the situation you're in, the people you're working with. That's what humans do. And so AI is here as a tool for you to enhance and also, I would say, create more speed in the way that you're doing things. The other thing that I use it for is advanced analytics. Like if you really don't know how to do statistics, which most people don't, then you can use AI to generate statistics for you on a data set. I've put in very large data sets and had it analyze that and give me statistics from that. And that is hugely beneficial because as anyone who's been working in this as long as I have, it used to be Excel spreadsheets. You were out there doing all your if and statements and doing all your calculations, right? I don't have to do that anymore. So what you want to think of AI is your partner in taking care of the things that are more tedious and time consuming for you that you don't really need a human to do versus the things that you actually need a human to do, like understand the nuances, understand the business strategies. The AI doesn't understand any of that, right? It's not part of that process. The other things like chatbots, virtual coaches can also create enhanced engagement. So if they're integrated into day-to-day or into already existing platforms you have at work, or your company's planning on doing that, they can go to the AI and ask a question right in the moment. And this has been kind of my hill to die on, is that I believe all learning should happen within the flow of work. And it shouldn't be some separate event you go to, because that is more effort and requires people to task switch. If I'm in the moment and I'm like, ooh, I really don't understand this, I need to have either a quick learning module or a quick description or a PDF. I should be able to, in the platform I'm in, go to my chat and say, give me a learning module on this, or give me a quick description of that. And when we move to that model, that's when the partnership with AI and learning and development will become even more critical, because guess where that AI is getting that information from? L&D, right? So you have to think of this as that we're building a future of learning where AI is our partner, not replacing us, because it cannot replace us. It doesn't matter what people say, like, oh, AI is going to take over. No. How many of you have dealt with bots? You go to a website and you're like, I need help. And you go to a bot and the bot's like, oh, here are the 5 things I can give you help with. You're like, it's not any of those things. So I still need to talk to a person, right? So I just want you to realize that AI, the more you learn about AI and the more you're able to integrate it into the way that you're doing things to create efficiency for yourself, the better you're going to be in L&D. You must learn AI. It is a requirement now. It is a skill you need to know. And you must also stay on top of like what AIs are the most important to know for L&D work. And I didn't do this. We have an FAQ document that we're going to send to everybody, but I will also put in a list of AIs that I use for different purposes that I'll have Bernie send out as well. But you're going to be able to create scalable, efficient, and effective learning solutions with AI. And most importantly, you're going to be able to analyze the data, which feeds into what Lauren and Denise were talking about behavior change, right? So I don't want to manually have to calculate all of those things. I can have AI do that for me as long as I have the data. So just think of it in terms of that. Where can I take away tediousness from my learning and development role that AI can do for me? I will say, I was telling Lauren and Denise today that I watched a whole video about a guy had to teach ChatGPT that there are actually 3 R's in strawberry, not 2 R's, because it kept telling him there were only 2 R's. So also AI is not 100% accurate. So you have to check it still and make sure what it's saying is accurate. Or sometimes it'll spit things out and I'm like, I don't even know where this came from. This is not what I asked you. So I just want you to remember this is not an imperfect tool. It is not more, it doesn't offer more than a human does. It's just a tool, a partner that we use to be able to enhance our ability to be more effective and efficient in L&D.
Absolutely. And, I've been saying this for a while as well, Michelle. There will always be human beings involved in the education of other human beings. There's no replacing what we bring to the table. But having a tool like AI does allow us to become more efficient with our time, and we can delegate tasks that would otherwise be a time suck for us and allow us to work on higher priorities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like those moments if you work in an organization where you get an email, an urgent email, and they're like, hey, your manager's like, I'm going into a meeting and I need to understand how this works. And it's like, I can upload that program that I just created into AI, my PDF, and say, write a paragraph about how this is going to work or how the process works and shoot it over to them quickly. Whereas it probably take me a half an hour or more to actually type everything out. That's where you're looking for AI to help you so that you don't have to stress about that. Okay, now here's the information, send it to your manager, right? Because you spend a lot of time doing those things. So it can help you with communication, I think is really important, and organization. That's kind of what I use it for. But again, you have to check it because it's not nuanced. It doesn't understand your situation. It doesn't understand your people. It doesn't know your organization. And you can't expect it to. So it's your partner, not in charge of you.
Very good. All right. Well, that is the end of our curated questions for the discussion. I would like to open it up to the audience. If you want to raise your hand to come off of mute, you can ask a question or post it into the Q&A. While we're waiting to see if any of that happens, Joey, if you wouldn't mind dropping the FAQ into the chat. Thank you. Looks like you sent that to me directly. Drop that out to everyone. There we go. Thank you. And open the floor to any questions. If you have any commentary, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring you in off of mute or type your question to the Q&A.
Hey, Bernie, maybe while we're waiting for the questions to come in, I want to compliment alongside what Michelle was talking about with AI to talk about just the benefits of technology being complementary, because the world I live in for Insignia training is on the coaching and leadership development side more than on the learning side per se. I was speaking to a couple of hundred business executives in South America recently, and we were talking about things like the GDP of an entire country. And this particular group of executives were coming from an industry like mining, where we were looking at how they could save money and generate more revenue for their company. And so we were able to use AI to generate some facts and stats. And that helped us to understand that the GDP of that country was a certain amount, and that 5% of the GDP is spent on healthcare. So we were able to arm our offerings in coaching and leadership development by saying, okay, if the 5% is equivalent, let's say, to $1 billion, what if we could just save you 1% of the 5% simply by coming in and providing coaching, business coaching, and leadership development? Would that not be a benefit to you as a company to save that kind of money? And it was at that moment that the companies had light bulbs going off, because it wasn't just around, oh, we're going to train people some skills, or we're going to train people on this initiative. It was about saving money and generating revenue by using these resources. So when you're looking at holistically well-rounded employees, you want to use technology, like looking at biometric data on when people are the most stressed, when their heart rate variability is changing, how people are navigating their day. So I am all in favor of everything Michelle said about the complementary nature of using technology, including AI, for the way that we conduct business from the leadership all the way down to the front line.
I do want to answer one question because it's either Eva or Ava. I apologize. I'm not positive, but earlier you asked what are incentives for L&D professionals to take up this role, and we haven't answered that question. And so what I would say is, from my perspective, and Lauren and Denise can add to this, is that it gave me the opportunity to actually continue to grow in L&D in a way that I couldn't have if I was inside of a corporation. It gave me the opportunity to innovate in ways that I know from my experience, my education, are more beneficial to learners. And really, my incentive is the learner. Yes, I want to benefit corporations, but I want learners to enjoy their experience and to benefit from their experience of learning. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to force you to go to a module that doesn't apply to you, isn't important to you, etc. I want you to be excited about learning. I want you to be interested in what's going on. And most importantly, I want you to have the opportunity to really reflect on it and then implement it. And so to me, I could not do that inside of a corporation. There is no space for that. I was in a position that was in a hierarchy, and I was only working on specific things in the way that they wanted me to work on them. And I have tons of ideas. And so for me, this is the better situation because I get to learn and grow. I get to innovate all the time. And also, I'm learning more about the different companies, the different perspectives, the different cultures, which enhances my ability as an L&D expert to become even better at my job, right? Those experiences. When you're in a corporation, you're only learning the experiences in that corporation. And honestly, that creates a lot of bias for you. Particularly confirmation bias and recency bias that inhibit your ability to be innovative. So that's why I think moving to this model is so good, and why, as a person who works in L&D, this can be incredibly beneficial for you. But I do know also it's a little scary because it's not a full-time job where you go and you have everything every day. So you also have to be a person who enjoys that piece of it where it's not the same every day. And some people don't. They want it to be similar, and that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. Either model is fine. But for me, and I know for Denise and probably Lauren as well, that just doesn't fit for us. We had our own ways of wanting to create learning, and we just couldn't do that in the situation we were in.
Hey, Bernie, can I make one really quick plug for us before we run out of time today? Because I know we're at the top of the hour. For those of you that are still with us, Michelle and I are going to be conducting a multi-week series on how to get more done in 90 days than most people get done in an entire year. And the series is sponsored by Bernie and Insignia Training. And so we want to encourage you that we are not just here to tell you how we do this for other people. This multi-week series that we're going to be presenting is completely complimentary. So it will be free to all of you listening, well, and anybody that would be listening. I'm really excited about it. Michelle and I have put a lot of time and effort into building it. And thanks to Insignia for sponsoring the series that's coming up on that. So if you're looking forward to trying to figure out how to get more done with less time and have better outcomes, come join us.
I am obviously very excited at the potential of that program, and very, very excited to be a sponsor of it as well, Denise. So thank you. All right, that brings us to the top of the hour, and I'm a huge proponent of ending meetings on time. So that is a wrap for today. Thank you everyone for joining. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar workshop, and expect an email with the recording as well as the frequently asked questions that we dropped into the chat. We'll see you next time. Enjoy the day.
Everyone.